Hey TRTR family, it's so lovely to come and talk to y'all again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Spark Orion. I'm 37. I'm the mom of 5, and I have borderline personality disorder.
Bruised but not broken, still here and still open, looking for you, to you.
Today we're going to talk about the systems of unbelief. Just so we're clear, my thoughts on unbelief are a little different than the biblical representation of unbelief. They do appear to intertwine though, at least when it comes to how the spirit of unbelief affects one's perseverance and resilience. I define the system of unbelief as a mindset which results in a person making decisions that affect the well-being of themselves and others. This mindset stems from emotional spaces such as fear, shame, guilt, insecurity, anger, pain, jealousy, grief, as well as sexual deviance such as rape, molestation, and coercion. From my lifelong observations and personal experience, it appears to be a product of trauma, anxiety, PTSD, and other mental health issues. I would infer to it as a mental cage or prison of sorts, a mental prison, which does not allow or encourage growth, progression, and evolution of the human spirit. Here's an example for you. So a caregiver takes a child to a local playground, okay? The playground has swings, slides, and it's got one of those tall climbing structures in the center of it. The caregiver tells the child, don't climb on that. Don't climb that. You can do all the other things, just don't climb on that playing structure. This particular caregiver possibly fears that the child is going to get injured or hurt. Will the child get injured? Will the child get hurt? Maybe, maybe not. It's me, I'm the caregiver. So the caregiver prefers to avoid the thought, the possibility, the worry, the potential of lost resources. Nobody has time to be in the emergency room, okay? In regards to this perceived and hypothetical fall, this potential injury at the park. Maybe they themselves fell off a climbing structure when they were a child and got hurt. But at least 2 things are happening here. 1, they're reacting to their own personal fear, and 2, they believe that they're helping the child. But this actually does a few things to the child that likely were not considered nor registered in conscious thought by the caregiver. 1, it prevents the opportunity for autonomy, which is very important in children. 2, it helps to instill a fear within the child. 3, it leads to the absence of a conversation between the caregiver and the child as to whether this perceived injury may or may not actually occur. And that's not to say that the caregiver might actually not. They might actually need to say no. They might have assessed the child's current abilities at the time and be like, you know what? I don't want my 2-year-old climbing up this super tall play structure. That's just not where we're at right now. Well, baby, let's go ahead and redirect you over here to the slides and the swings, okay? However, oftentimes there can be another solution or a compromise available. And when it comes to systems of unbelief, to tie it all together, if we further investigate this mindset, it's possible that the caregiver brings this fear into different aspects of their life, and then also projects this fear onto the child and others around them. Now, from my lifelong observations and personal experience, I believe that the systems of unbelief are rooted in control versus guidance of self and others, influence, collaboration. And let's not forget about that connection between the subconscious and the conscious. More severe examples of unbelief include abuse, neglect, sexual assault, unaliving, and abandonment. An infamous statement in relation to unbelief is that crabs in a barrel mentality, which was addressed by Sir Booker T. Washington, baby. That inability to see others build, grow, evolve, and change for the better without wanting or feeling that they need to pull them back down. As a Black woman living in America, when I think about unbelief, I can't help to reflect on its possible root causes, because it didn't just start here in this generation. We keep talking about generational curses and trying to undo those and unravel those systems. Well, it didn't start here. It didn't start where I'm about to go either, but this was a big thing that definitely impacted our history. I tend to spend a lot of time in reflection. So I was just sitting around thinking one day, and it came to me, and I thought, I think that the trauma related to unbelief largely lies in slavery. Every aspect of life had to be controlled by both the perpetrator and the enslaved. The latter for survival. Hope was dangerous in that time. Dreams could mess around and get you killed. They were seen as foolish. Seeing someone live or attempt to live a life that you yourself were unable to live likely brought about feelings of fear, shame, guilt, grief, anger, pain, jealousy, insecurity, and sexual deviance. The defiantly resilient and hopeful were both feared and hated by both perpetrator and enslaved alike. Just take a look at the hood, y'all. My family was also part of the generation that got swept up in the drug epidemic of the 80s. So they went from previous trauma to living in the projects in San Francisco, to becoming enslaved to drug addiction, to suffering the consequences of that drug abuse, to trying to rebuild a life based on survival. They didn't have the resources to build a more stable life for us. And if there were resources available, the quicksand type of life that they lived would not have afforded them the break to be able to go after those things. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. At this age, I am so much more able to have compassion for the lives that they led versus when I was a child having to live within the pain and chaos of their choices. As an adult, I'm now learning to embrace and accept the fact that I have a choice. And I have to go back and reparent myself because I have to teach myself that I can do better. My kids can learn to choose, make different choices than even I did, and they can learn things faster than what I learned it. They can learn things earlier and get a faster head start than I did. Ooh, I already feel the chains of generational trauma breaking up off of us. Okay, listen up. So I don't know about you, but me growing up as a Black child in a Black home, baby, your elder's word was law, right or wrong. Having an opinion was seen as disrespect, and that disrespect would in fact be dealt with. There was no speaking your mind respectfully. What is that? That's what they considered new age gentle parenting, but really it's just, respect for another human being. But it's another conversation. To me, it felt like, hell, you were just a child. You apparently you didn't have a brain when you were born into this world. Your brain was not there yet. You were just a body, okay? And that body was supposed to do what was told, when it was told, how it was told. You were supposed to eat what you were supposed to eat. What's on the table? That's what you get. You have an allergy? Okay, well, this is what we're eating. I'm so sorry. We don't have the funds nor resources to worry about no damn allergy, okay? You went where you were told to go. You were touched by whomever wanted to touch you without consent. There was no, do you want to kiss or hug this person? It was, come here, give me hugs, kisses, and all that nonsense. And I really feel for the children who did not like touch and personal intrusion into their space. Though you could literally see your caregivers on a day-to-day basis making various mistakes, you were not allowed to. In the homes that I grew up in, I was not allowed to have independent thought, honey. Autonomy, what is that? We don't do that here. I literally just had to manage each situation as best I could. I was one of those kids who knew early on that I was very, very sensitive and I felt my emotions very, very deeply, which is a problem when you live in a home with a dispassionate and abusive caregiver. I'm trying to think back to like my earliest memories, and I remember, I feel like I remember being, I had to be no more than, I definitely couldn't have been 2 yet, but I remember being in diapers, wet, alone. I don't know where I was, but I was scared. I do remember that. You know, when I was removed from my mom's care, way back when, I used to wonder, like later on down the line, I'm like, how come other family members didn't step in? Like, why did they send me with her? Like, why do they feel, why the courts feel like she was the best choice for me to go be with, for me to go stay with? When I say her, I mean my grandmother. Like, I felt passed around. I felt like I wasn't cared for. And now as an adult, I'm thinking, okay, well, everybody was probably going through their own shit. Everybody probably had their own resources that they had to keep to with for their own families and whatnot. You know, everybody just doesn't have it like that. But as a child, that was all I could think about. And it made me angry. And as I'm thinking about it now that I'm an older person with my own babies, I'm thinking, okay, maybe my grandmother felt obligated to take me. Maybe she started feeling resentful about that and started taking that out, her frustrations about that out on me. I don't know. You know, we went to church every Sunday. Maybe she thought she was doing her Christian duty. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Maybe she had other reasons, but I won't ever get to ask. It wasn't until years later, I think I definitely had to be an adult, because this was probably only like maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little more, when I found out that my grandmother was actually an alcoholic. And that's a lot of the reason why, you know, she would beat me. With my mom being a recovering drug addict, she had to be very careful about the way that she lived her life. When she came out of the drug program, the drug rehabilitation program, and did the parenting classes and all of that, and was able to get us back, there were still ongoing things that she had to do. Like literally, she was still kind of tethered to the system, and I didn't see that as a child because that wasn't something that we discussed or talked about. But later on, I do recall her, you know, speaking about the fact that like she had so many responsibilities, not only to take care of us, but also on a continuing basis to be able to show the courts that she was fit to be able to take care of us. So her time was really very much divided. And I know that it had to have been hard coming back from a place, making certain decisions, and then having to rebuild your life, having to get to know your children, because it's been 8 years that passed. Actually, no, was it 8? No, it was 6 years that passed. 6 years that passed between the time when I was removed to the time that I went back with my mom. And so in those 6 years, she missed out on a lot with the three of us. And she had to relearn her children. And she also had to deal with the fact that we were angry. We were so angry. And we all reacted with the anger in various ways. And so she had to deal with that as well. And I know we stressed that lady out. I didn't know anything about self-love as a child, okay? I didn't know what that was, but I know that I did grow up watching my family members hiding behind themselves and various coping mechanisms. I still remember seeing drugs, moving around. I saw them, like, you know, dealing with various disappointments in different ways. I literally watched them abuse themselves and also talk themselves out of their dreams. Which, when you hear an adult talking themselves out of their dreams and you're listening to this as a child, you are internalizing this. Oh, well, then they can't do it. How can I do it? You know, the lucky ones who were lucky enough to remove themselves and distance themselves from a lot of the entrapments, being in such a close or tight-knit family life, a system of unbelief, end up catching themselves on something and snagging themselves along the way on something else that would trip them up, and a lot of times wouldn't be able to be rectified until, you know, years later. I'm a part of that crew. So yeah, I include myself in that. Due to the lack of faith in themselves and also the continuous disappointments, I believe that at some point they developed the belief that they couldn't go to school, couldn't get a better job, couldn't push through their own madness, couldn't create goals for themselves, couldn't put down the alcohol, the drugs, the man, the woman, couldn't leave that man, couldn't leave that woman, couldn't be a better version of themselves, couldn't be a better parent. They fell and they failed so many times that their disappointments just swept them out to sea. They decided to settle, they couldn't hope, and they couldn't do anything more than survive. All of these couldn'ts were passed down from generation to generation. And what I learned is that I can't absolves you of accountability and responsibility. It absolves you from taking ownership of the issue that is in fact your own issue. I can't robs you of the empowerment to change and affect negative thought patterns. How can you challenge negative thought patterns under the umbrella and the guise of I can't? I can't does not allow your brain to defeat that muscle memory that you created of defeat. I can't translates into and you can't either. I am starting to learn to look at the dark spaces within myself and reconcile with them, to treasure my scars and my lessons because they've provided me great insight that I would not have otherwise had, to appreciate vulnerability as a key to both access and assess my wounds and allow myself to work on those, to strengthen those and to heal those in my own time, in my own way. Another thing that I'm learning to do, which is I'm so proud of myself because I tend to be a person who, baby, I am a jack of all trades. I will figure it out, learn it, do it, and be done with it and keep it moving. I don't like to ask people for things because I don't want nobody asking things from me, or at least that's how I felt up until I started feeling that way up until recently. Now, my loved ones, I tend to go above and beyond for them. But I'm starting to learn how to get some boundaries on that because, that's not always good neither. But what I am learning to do is I am learning to properly vet someone and be able to determine whether they're a safe person to ask for help from or not a safe person. Now, a safe person is not going to turn around and throw the stuff in your face. Safe person is going to just help you because that's what they choose to do. Not because they're obligated to do so, and they will keep it moving. I am learning that love in itself is transformative, and also that I have the unique qualifications to be able to transform my own self. I am learning that the language that we speak to ourselves and others can manifest creation or can be a catalyst of destruction. I used to speak so negatively to myself when I made a mistake. The struggle was real with the negative thought patterns. When I didn't meet my own expectations that I created for myself without assessing whether they were actually realistic or not, without giving myself that grace. I used to hold myself to impossibly and ridiculously high standards and then beat myself up when I failed, when I jumped short of the goal. I'm learning to build my own confidence by creating small goals, baby steps, meeting those goals, next getting that gratification for, oh good, making a little bit larger goals that will challenge me a bit, meeting those, and so on and so forth, which allows me to gradually extend the size of the goal and the level of challenge to it. And what I'm essentially doing is I'm building a muscle of self-confidence and of meeting goals. So it's multifold, but for me, I feel like instead of setting this high goal and then trying to throw myself at it, it just makes more sense for me to move at a smaller pace and next thing you know, I look up and I'm like, oh wow, look, I've accomplished this, I've accomplished that. That's wonderful, and I'm very proud of the work that I have done thus far. At some point, I found myself in a repetitive state of the expectations that I even placed on my children. I remember telling myself as a kid, now I would never do this with my own children. And then I found myself repeating parental patterns that were imprinted on me. And one of those things was also having those insanely high expectations of my children. Why? Because if I have them for myself, I'm gonna, So I had impossibly high expectations of my children, and then when they wouldn't meet those expectations, both developmentally, just in emotionally different ways, in my mind, I just couldn't comprehend it. And I would behave as if they had completely failed me, versus, themselves and their own free will. Shockingly, none of those things made us any better. In fact, they did quite the opposite. And it was only recently that I realized that I've been moving through systems of unbelief my entire life, as have probably so many of you. I used to wonder if I was doing something wrong, if I was weird. I know that I grew up with people-pleasing tendencies because of the abuse. And I would have this thing in my head, like, okay, if I try really hard in this area, or if I do really excellent here, this person is going to love me, this person is going to embrace me. And it didn't happen that way. And that, messed my head up constantly, repetitively, over and over and over again. It's because I had not only did I have these strange expectations of myself, but also I found that whenever I would do that, it seemed to be like the more people would take advantage. I used to wonder if I was wrong for trying. I didn't want to look stupid if I made a mistake in front of the world. I used to have this alternating thought process on literally it was a spectrum, and I would be on either side. There was no balance, and it'd be like, oh man, how are they gonna view me? How are they gonna see me? And then on the other hand, I don't give a how they see me. Matters not. I worried a lot about my voice because I didn't feel like I had one. I worried a lot about standing up for myself when I felt as though I was wronged. Worried about having differing opinions than other people and voicing those opinions. So much so that I noticed that when I'd be so worried and caught up, and I'd be so concerned that someone was going to, the older I got, the more I got concerned that someone was going to challenge my thought process, and I was going to fold and be like, okay, fine, we'll just do what you want to do. So then I would get angry and be like, no, I said this. And it's like, okay. Okay. I had almost this complicated, combination of being kind of naive, even up through an older age, and really wanting to really believe in, mercy and giving a lot of grace. But also, my toxic trait is that I've always had I've always wanted to be the judgment and the persecution for when someone exercised poor judgment where I was concerned. It'd be shit like, okay, oh, you did something to me. Oh, I'm definitely coming for you. I'm definitely finna wreck your whole life. Yes, you thought you would think better, because I would do a lot of things for people just because that's what I wanted to do. I was a child who didn't receive love. So when I ran into people that I really cared about, family, friends, etc., I wanted to do, for them. Not to be like, okay, I'm going to do this and you give me this in return. It's just because I loved and cared about them. And so I wanted to see them happy. I wanted to see them prosper. And so when somebody turned around and mishandled me, we're circling back to that whole vetting someone to be safe thing. when somebody would mishandle me, I would lash out and become extremely angry. And oftentimes it'd be like, insane, unjust coping mechanism alert. I'm going to burn you and then burn myself and take us both down together. The ship is going down, because what you are going to understand and learn today, then you're not going to play with me. So actually what I learned in therapy about this was therapy showed me that I was actually repeatedly punishing people in lieu of not being able to stand up for myself when I was a child and was being abused. You know, something that I struggled with for quite a long time. I became a mom when I was 15 years old, was pregnant at 14, became a mom at 15 with my first child. And I didn't realize all the feelings that were going to come with being a mother. First of all, it was a planned situation, baby girl. Like, I was like, look, I need to get about this house. So how can I get about this house with this man sexually assaulting me? Oh, look, I got a boyfriend. We're going to have a baby. We're going to start our own family. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but, my beautiful baby girl was born. And all the trauma, all the problems from unresolved issues from my childhood, because I was still a child, reared up and got in the way of me being able to care for her to the best of my ability. I felt very jealous and envious of this child that I had bore. I felt very jealous and envious of her for the fact that she had, because naturally I'm a person who I work hard. I am gonna go above and beyond. That's just me. That's who I am. And so I felt jealous and envious of a child who had a parent and a caregiver that was willing to do that for her. And it was just really weird, because it's like I could not seem to let that go. And I was so angry about it and felt resentment towards the child because the child had me. It really took me a long time. Like, I'm a mom of 5, and literally, like, it had to be like a couple years ago, and slowly I've evolved over the course of time of being a mother. The first child, I've had to say some apologies to her because of how she was raised, because I didn't know how to give her all the things that she was looking for, because every time I looked at her, I saw me, and that was extremely painful. At the time, I didn't have the ability to go to therapy and take care of and see to those issues. So, and that child right there, she's such a blessing. She's such a resilient young lady. And, I hope for whatever healing that she needs is taken care of for her in her lifetime, so that she can enjoy the fullness of her life. But, I was a child, raising a child, and was so angry still about not having what I felt like I needed growing up. And I had not dealt with that anger before having her, because I was in the throes of being sexually assaulted, and the child was a means for me to remove myself from that situation. But I also didn't realize how much love and a feeling of protection, like I wanted to protect her at every instance, even from her own father. Like, you discipline my baby, and I'm like, excuse me, sir, we don't do that. Yeah, but I don't care. We don't do that around here. Okay, that was me. But it was my children that came to me, and my children were like, Mom, I don't like that you do this. I would prefer that you do this. And so to have my children be able to articulate to me their needs was like a defining moment, because it allowed me to see a couple different things. One, they felt safe enough and comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, Mom, like, I love you. Like, I love you to the fullest. Like, I know you my rider, you cut for me, but I don't really too much like this right here. And instead of me getting defensive about it, I was like, oh, well, crap. I became insecure, because I'm like, okay, like, this has been going on for all this time, and like, this is something that I had it in the blind spot. Like, I would try to think, oh yeah, I see that, but I'm not really gonna look at that. But it took me to really sit with myself and really accept that, Sparkle, this is how you feel. And I was able to address this in therapy. And my therapist, was able to basically correlate that and not explain, because I already knew that it was what was going on, but she was able to just be in agreement with me, like, yeah, this is what you're feeling, this is what you have going on. And so once I was able to accept that about myself, then I was able to really start being intentional and taking the steps to start moving myself in another direction. And I feel like that has been extremely beneficial to the relationship I have with my children. Like, we've got a ways to go, but we are definitely intentionally working through the challenges. As a person who is so in this journey, because listen, okay, let me tell you something. I spent so many years of my life being in a space where I wanted to build up other people in their attributes and what made them special as humans, that I did a lot of neglecting of myself. So I'm in a space now where I am look, Sparkle it's gonna be me, you girl, and not in a jaded way or anything like that. It's in a necessary way, because there is no way that I'm going to be able to enjoy the fullness of all that is offered within the beauty of a relationship between two people without really understanding who Sparkle is in the fullness of herself, and also being able to accept the fullness of me and accept all the different parts that make up me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the in between, accept all of me, and then have the expectation that whomever I date and hopefully eventually marry will have the same acceptance that I have for self, because I value that. So if I value that, that will also be something that they value, because I will have taken the time to vet that they are indeed a safe person. And that's where the magic happens. I have some tips for success. Tip 1, it is so important to have at least one person that can be like your cheerleader, that can cheer you on during this process, because baby, it is hard. It is hard to have thought processes that you've had for your entire life that you can remember, and then be in a space to be like, oh crap, I need to make some changes, some things need to shift. And you're older, and so your mind is shifting at a slower pace, But the beauty of it is you have a lot better understanding of why it needs to be done. And if you don't know your why, I definitely recommend that you slow down and take the time to figure out your why. The whys are the roots of the issues. So the projection outward of our behaviors, manifestation of our triggers, etc., I feel like those are all symptoms. I think of it like a tree. I like to think of things as plants. So I think of it like a tree. And these are all like the leaves on the tree. Well, at the trunk, there are the roots. The root is where the problem initiated and originated from. And if you can figure out what happened at the root stage, I feel like then you can go ahead and clean up the tree. So that's my first tip, is you have someone that can cheer you on. If you don't have an actual person there, what I would recommend is you find somebody that you admire, somebody who's positive, somebody who is maybe in a space where you want to be as far as your life, whether that's emotionally, mentally. There could be more than one person, it could be multiple people. And, in this day and age, they've got podcasts, they have books. I like to download things onto my Kindle or get things from the public library. And I also listen to a lot of podcasts. And so I suggest that you find somebody that you can glean, somebody that you can allow to mentor you. I mean, they won't be in person, but in this day and age, the beauty of having so much access at our fingertips, you can have a mentor, and baby, they won't even know you. Okay, and none of that matters, because you're like, look, I've changed my whole life because you encouraged me to. They're like, oh, you did that. Thank you. Yeah, it was you. Take me for an example. So I impulsively signed up for Women Evolve, and guess what? it's coming this year, Women Evolve 2023. I'm going to be there, and I'm so excited that I'm going to be in a room with a bunch of other women with the beautiful spirits. The energy in the room is going to be like, yes, everything. And I cannot wait, and I'm so excited to go. Tip number 2. So while your brain is working on correcting those behaviors and ingrained habits, you might suffer from withdrawals, okay? As you're making those changes, those are all new to you, so those have not been developed as muscle memory yet. So you're going to have to be intentional about remembering to stay grounded in that space of, okay, this is where I'm going, because if you don't, somehow you can wind up back on a path of just existing, and then you are defaulting to these negative thought processes, negative patterns that were previously already cemented in there. You have to be intentional about reminding yourself that, oh, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm doing that now. Instead of doing this, I'm going to do that now. When I run into this issue, instead of doing what I usually do, I'm going to make a different decision. For example, I recently went through a breakup, and to allow myself to go through the grieving process without doing any of my previous maladaptive coping mechanisms, I started learning how to do my nails. I started learning how to, I went and got a whole acrylic set powder, all the powders, the brushes and all that, and have been learning how to do my own nails. Also, I've been trying to spend a lot of time with my babies as much as I can. What else? Just learning a new language. I'm learning Spanish. Just different things to enrich my life. Okay? Different things to enrich my life and not detract and take away from my healing process. Things that are going to correlate, because if I'm telling myself that I'm undoing some negative thought patterns and etc., but then I go out and I engage in some things that are not necessarily good for me, it's counterproductive. And then at some point I'm going to feel like a hypocrite. And then at some point I'm going to start beating myself up about it, and then the cycle begins again. Now, if you do happen to fall off the ladder, it's important to give yourself grace. That's another thing. Grace is so important during this process because, again, it is hard. It is not easy. Healing is not easy. It has you have to challenge so many of the things that you thought were truth, and correct that and reposition that with things that are actually true and real to your particular circumstances. So give yourself a lot of grace, pat yourself on the back, seriously, act like you're a child with a sticker chart and be like, okay, you did this, happy face for you. Okay, this is what's going to happen. Listen, if you don't do this, negative. If you do this, that's not good for you. Here's the negative consequence. If you do this good thing, here's the positive consequence. So, we really have to, in a sense, really reparent ourselves in different areas, so that we are able to really intentionally move ourselves along this journey of wellness and healing. Things that I do when I start feeling myself kind of slipping into negative thought patterns, I slow myself down. Number one, I've learned that for me, I need to take life at a much slower pace. So I slow myself down, I stop, I breathe, I collect my thoughts. I have started doing something, I call it the truth meter. So you know how you have the wand at the airport, it scans for metal. You got some metal belt on, you got to take that off. Okay, so I scan myself with the negative thoughts, and I scan myself and I say, is this something that's true? Or is it something that's not true? So if it's something that's not true, I can say, okay, this is something that's not true, but you had some feelings connected to this. Okay, what can you do about that to realign yourself with your purpose, with your reason for doing this? Okay, is it true? Okay, all right, it's true. Okay, so what can you start to do about that? Because it's not something that's going to change overnight, but what systems can you start putting in place to start uprooting some of that and getting yourself into a healthier space? So I do a lot of practicing grace with myself and practicing vulnerability, allowing myself to be vulnerable safely to myself or with my therapist or another trusted individual. I allow myself to be vulnerable in those spaces. That way I'm actually getting positive feedback, which then reinforces the positivity that I'm doing working on myself, and it just really builds a foundation that allows me, so when things get a little challenging, I've got this foundation now to go off of. Another thing to note is that if you are starting to spiral a little bit and you are trying to redirect yourself, but it's not happening, like it's not cohesive, chances are you've got some other things going on. What I notice about myself is when I get like that, I could possibly be tired, hungry, overstimulated. Those are three of the things that tend to majorly be part of my issue when I am not able to get myself back on track. And so what I do is I just immediately give myself a timeout, like as soon as I possibly can. Like the next stopping point I'm taking, if I don't have a lot of time, I'm at least going to take 5 minutes to myself and just breathe and recenter. And then what I do is I'll give myself a positive affirmation and get through the rest of my time as best I can, while remembering that I need to give myself a lot of grace because I'm either hungry, tired, overwhelmed, overstimulated, and I just can't fully take care of my needs at this moment. But as soon as I get to a stopping point, like I make sure to really, like, whatever it is that I got going on, if I'm tired, I will lay down and take a nap. If I am hungry, like I'm finna go feed myself, like you gotta take care of yourself during this process. Is very important. You'll notice too that you'll get tired a lot easier because your brain is working hard. Your brain is working on creating new synapses and new muscle memory to like get you going in these better habits. So you're going to be tired more, and that's normal. Tip number 3, you may become self-conscious about your behaviors and your thought patterns because now you're starting to become painfully aware of how much they've impacted your life and the lives of people around you. But once again, we are humans. We all fuck up. We all do stuff that is not okay. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There has never been a human, to my knowledge, that has lived on this earth and has gotten to a certain age and has never done anything that they don't regret, feel guilty about, feel ashamed about, etc., no matter how big, how small. So shuck all that and give yourself the room, the grace to be able to just look, hey, okay, this happened. You feel some type of way about it. Let those feelings come and let those feelings pass. I try not to dwell in the spaces of guilt and shame because they're counterproductive and they don't allow me, one, to get the full lessons out of it because I'm so wrapped up in my own pain. That's how I start getting wrapped up in the pain thing again. And so I have to unseat myself from that and be like, look, this did happen. It was not okay. Okay, now we're moving forward. What are we going to do differently to both prevent that from happening again and fortify ourselves so that way, we're not in those spaces anymore. Oh, baby, this one is a big one, okay? It is so important. Once you realize that you are in an unbelief system and you try to untangle yourself from an unbelief system, you will have people crabs in a barrel in you trying to like bring you into a space of what the hell do you think you're doing? Like, why are you acting different? Well, what's this? I'm not able to press the buttons that I used to be able to press, or I'm not able to do the things and say the stuff that I used to be able to say. Like, what is this? Like, what is this new you? I don't like this. And so they'll do a couple different things. They'll try to extra hard go in and try to make you feel some type of way, and you have to protect yourself and your energies. It's very, very important to do that. So like, you want to protect your process and your progress from people that do not mean you well, energies that do not mean you well. So all those things we talked about, people that like live and breathe in a state of all those negative, I'm not going to say negative, all of those energy and emotional states that are counterproductive to wellness and health. You want to stay away from people who exhibit that, especially if it's triggering for you, okay? You want to add people and experiences that facilitate and add to your growth and your progress. You want cheerleaders. You want people that are around you that are like, yes, do that, figure that out, like learn that, yes, turn over a new leaf. Yes, you know, you have boundaries, great. What do you need from me? How can I support you? Those are the people and the energies that you want to have around you. Anybody that is worried about taking from you, anybody that is worried about how this life change is going to affect them, how it's going to impact them, you're going to want to take a closer look at that and see whether that's somebody or a certain level of energy that you want to remove from your space, or whether you want to set firmer boundaries for that individual. Oh, and honey, people that see you working on self and try to trigger you without regard. Another tip is beware people that are like they want to put you into a box. Okay. So if you were going through a healing experience, would it make sense for you to walk up to somebody and say, somebody that maybe you saw them in a different point of their life and they're not in that space anymore. Clearly they're thriving. They're trying to figure things out. They're doing research. They're looking up stuff. They are in a space of renewal. As a person, a fellow person who would be going through that's in a wellness journey themselves, you would be supportive of that person's journey, even if you can't devote your time, your resources, etc. Shoot, at the very least, move about their way. But people that try to put you in a box, you need to be concerned about that. People that say, oh, well, you used to do this and you used to be like this. So, I mean, what do you think you're doing now? You know, people like that who are so insistent on wanting to control you, to be able to continue to add to their own narrative, baby. Work on becoming more self-aware. Work on discernment. Those are some areas that I'm really wanting to strengthen myself in. Discernment, big one. Being that I am a person who feels things very, very deeply, one would think that that would be something that, because of the experiences that I've had, no, it's not the way that works. So one of the areas that I'm really working on is discernment, and another is becoming more self-aware. We are becoming a society that like freaks out if we don't have our phone in our hand or a device in front of our face. Alone time is critical. Alone time is when you learn things about yourself. Alone time is when you can sit back and reflect, and then you can, it's like a process. So like, say you were building something, you don't just build from start to finish and not stop and pause to make sure that you are doing the right things for the project along the way. You're going to do some, you're going to step back, you're going to see, okay, I need to make this change, I need to make that change. But if you're never giving yourself alone time and you're never giving yourself that time to be self-reflective, then you're not learning as best as you could be, and that will be slowing down your process when it comes to evolving. One of the big ones I have to say is practice accountability. Notice that I said practice because, you know, as humans, we have egos, we have pride. So it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but practice, because the more you practice, the easier it will become. It sucks because, once again, ego and pride, but ego and pride are the killers of success. Accountability keeps you balanced and it keeps you humbled. Practice, practice, practice. I want to conclude this video today with a prayer that I came up with for myself, to heal those spaces within me that feel like they have holes in them, feel like they are broken, feel like they are unlovable, feel like they are lonely, etc. I came up with a prayer for myself to really remind myself that I am a whole person, and it's important for me to be able to meet my needs effectively and intentionally. And so I created a prayer for myself, and I would like to share it with you. to my inner child. I made a choice to turn around and look that broken child in the face and take her by her hands. I said to her, I know that they have deemed you unworthy and have gone out of their way to make it so, but baby, I shield you from that distortion. I know they tried to speak unrest into your life, but I choose to champion for your testimony. I choose to shield you from that doubt, from that betrayal. We will not condemn those that are so entrenched in their own pain and their own suffering. The only way that they can climb is off the back of your pain. The only way that they can absorb light is by removing yours. We forgive those transgressions and we begin the ascent into transformation. We protect ourselves from any person's need to blind you with your trauma and your pain. We restrict ourselves from consuming that version of love. We withhold our flesh's desire to exact revenge and prosecution. We still ourselves to be alert, attentive, and listen to God's voice from within our spirit. His direction, His will, His ordered footsteps. We train ourselves to listen, to shed the unnecessary for the necessary. We seek Him and we allow Him to shepherd us. Our life has purpose. Our breath has purpose. Our pain has purpose. Our suffering has purpose. Our experience has purpose. Our hope has purpose. Our relationship with self, others, and God has purpose. Let us live in that purpose. Amen. Thank you, TRTR family, for joining in today. It was such a pleasure to be able to share with you. And I hope that you were able to get something out of this that you could use, maybe someone else could use. As always, if you don't mind, go ahead and hit that like, that share, that subscribe. And once again, I love you.
Is you when you said let go?